I just love this book so much. I gave this book 4 stars, and that feels kind of generous. Can you say hello, Miss Willow? Oh, not to me. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Bridget, and this is Willow, and that is Winston. I'm so excited for this video. August was my biggest reading month in 2024. I read 8 books total, and we're gonna talk about them. To start off, I read 8 total books by 8 total authors, and 4 of the 8 books I gave 5 stars. So my average rating for this month was 4.5, which is amazing. And I read a total of 3,232 pages. So this was not only my biggest reading month, but also I think one of, if not my highest rating month. So like the best books and the most amount of books in one month. The first book that I read this month was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Emily Henry has released 5 contemporary romance novels, and after reading this one, I have read 4 out of them. So this is my 4th one of hers. I know that she previously published some other not contemporary romance novels, but I know nothing about those. Not my business. So this book follows the female main character who is a literary agent who lives in New York City, and she is suckered into taking a trip with her sister. Her sister takes her to a small town, I think in North Carolina maybe, and also presents her with a small town bucket list of small town stereotype, typical things to do in a small town, and says they have to complete them on their vacation. The male main character in this book is a book editor in New York City. He meets the female main character while she is trying to convince him to edit one of her client's books. So she's pitching the book to him, and the book is a small town trope romance, and he is not into it. He says no. Anyway, I loved this book so much. This is the first 5-star read of the month, was Book Lovers. Reading this book, I feel like I can't explain it well, but reading this book was a magical experience. Literally, there is no magic, but as a reader, reading this book is magical. I love a small town trope. I love a small town. I am not a city gal. I'm not trying to live in a city by any means, because I feel like I also was trying to convince her hey, small town life is kind of sick, bro. So, and the romance, so good. This was definitely a slow burn, kind of enemies to lovers. Reading this book definitely solidified to me that Emily Henry is one of my favorite authors. She just writes characters and stories that are so real and honest and raw, and you can for sure relate to any of the characters in this book. I also feel like she does a really good job of writing setting. Almost was the small town that they're visiting was another character in the novel. I don't know what else to say about this. I absolutely loved it. I absolutely ate it up. If you haven't read any Emily Henry's, definitely read one, and honestly, maybe start with this one. This one was so good. The next book that I read in August was Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This book sat on my shelf for over a year, and I hate that I put it off for so long. This was my first Carly Fortune book that I've ever read. She's read another one that's really popular, or wrote. Well, I'm sure she read it too, but Every Summer After. She also wrote that book, which I have not read, but I've also heard is very popular and very good. Okay, so a little bit about the book. This is a contemporary romance that is a dual timeline. So it follows the female main character who inherits a resort from her late mother, and then also follows the female main character 10 years earlier, about to graduate from college. As she meets the male main character, they end up spending the next 24 hours together. So the past timeline follows those 24 hours of them together. So meanwhile, the present timeline is 10 years after that, where the female main character runs into the male main character at her resort after not hearing from him for 10 years. This book was so good. I hated that I put it off for so long. I gave this 5 stars. I laughed, I cried, I giggled, I screamed. The plot twist, I loved this book. It was so cute. It was so fun. It was still very emotional. I definitely cried. I also just felt so connected to the characters in the story because of the dual timeline. I don't know, guys. I loved every single second of this book. So good. This really makes me want to read the rest of her books. Maybe one day. Add it to the TBR, am I right? The next book that I read in August was Lore of the Wilds by Annalise Brana. This is the Fairy Loot Special Edition, so if you see it somewhere else, it might not look like this one, but beautiful book. I got this one from, like I said, the Fairy Loot Romantasy box, so obviously it's a romantasy novel. This book follows the female main character who is a human, and she is trapped in a village with the rest of the fellow human in the land. And the village is surrounded by like an enchanted forest situation. So the story starts off with the village being devastated by an earthquake, and of course they're trapped in the land. Humans don't have a lot of money, so they can't just like rebuild quickly and easily. The female main character ends up making a deal with a Fey lord who comes to town. So part of the deal is she has to leave the village to go work in an enchanted library. The library is in the castle, in the Fey world, the Fey land, whatever. The library is enchanted so that Fae cannot go in. So since she is human, they are assuming and believing that she should be able to like go in and like work. The Fae are specifically looking for something. And so it's her job to just like clean up the library, categorize everything, catalog everything because they want to know what's in the library. And then also specifically looking for like a magical object or a magical book or something. So since they don't know if she'll be able to enter the library and actually like be okay, she makes a deal with them that she'll go in and try and like risk her life if they will in return help reconstruct her village. I didn't love this book. Like, I'm not obsessed with it, but I also didn't hate it. I think the pacing overall was a bit slow, but I did enjoy the storyline. I liked the female main character, Lore. Like, I liked her as a character. Her backstory was great, and I think it was really well fleshed out, so that was good. And of course, naturally, I fell for the main character, or the male main character. But I just wish that we had gotten more from him and more of him overall. I am imagining, I mean, there's gotta be a next book in this, I haven't looked into it, where I think we'll learn quite a bit more about him. I think that my biggest like qualm with this book is that there were some things that the characters did at the end that I just don't see fitting with the characters. I wish that it was like explained a little better, but I will say this is a cozy fantasy that takes place in a magical library, which I love a magical library. So I still did give this 3.75 stars. Not the best book, not the worst book. I think that's pretty like average, pretty in the middle rating wise. The next book that I read in August was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is the first book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. And again, this book sat on my shelf for over a year. I also want to say that the Dreamland Billionaire series is an interconnected standalone series, so you could technically read any book in the series. You don't have to read them in order. And this is a contemporary romance that follows the female main character as she works at Dreamland, which is basically Disney World. It's so similar to Disney World that I do not understand how it was like legal for her to do this. But I guess all you have to do is call it a different name and it's fine. I don't know. And then it also follows the male main character who is the grandson of the late owner of Dreamland. Part of his grandfather's will is for the male main character to complete a task in order to receive his inheritance. So the male main character gets right on to work, and the male main character ends up having to work with the female main character in order to complete his project. So we got a little of the billionaires trope, we got a little forced proximity, workplace trope, grumpy sunshine a little bit. Overall, I gave this book a 4 stars. It's not the best book that I've read, not the worst. It's just a silly little romance, I would say. Not too deep emotionally. I do think I want to read the rest of these. I think they're on Kindle Unlimited, so I might just read them that way. But I'm certainly not in a rush to finish it. I did like her writing. It was easy. It was fast-paced. Got through it really quickly. I will say that my one qualm with this book is that it didn't need to be this long. It is a 448-page book. I don't think it needed to be 448 pages. I was going to say it's quite a bit smaller than other books, but it's really not. it's only like a little bit smaller than other books. So anyway, this was fun. If you're looking for just like a silly little romance and you like the workplace romance and billionaire romance tropes, then maybe check this one out. The next book that I read was A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I actually lent this one out to my friend, so she currently has the copy of it. So here's a picture of it. This is a YA fantasy. This is by the same author that wrote the Letters of Enchantment. Is that what that series is called? I don't know why I think I could just turn around and see the name of that series. But it's the Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows books. Those books are also amazing. So that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to read this book, was because I love those. A River Enchanted is the first book in the Elements of Cadence duology. But this follows the male main character who returns to his home island after being away. He is actually called home. He's not just like going there on his free will. Well, I guess still free will, right? I mean, he chooses to go home. But anyway, he's asked to come home because there's been a string of young girls missing. They've been disappearing. So the island that he grew up on and that he's from is actually a magical island where spirits play a role in like everything magical. There's like water spirits, wind spirits, what else? Land spirits. I think there's more spirits than that, but I don't remember. Basically, like, if the spirits are mad at you or if you, like, disrespect them, then, like, it's thought that they'll get back at you. So you always want to be respectful of the spirits. So the male main character ends up teaming up with the female main character, who is actually his childhood rival. So they work together to investigate the disappearances and to help bring the girls back home. Also, I want to say this is giving like Scottish vibe. They're wearing plaids and stuff, you know? I really liked this book. It was definitely a slower paced book. It's not like a fast paced fantasy, but it was absolutely beautiful. It was heart-wrenching, imaginative, captivating, and the writing was like poetic. I ended up annotating this book a little bit because as I was reading it, I was like, this is beautiful and I want to be able to like come back and look at this quote later. But anyway, this book follows multiple perspectives. I think the storylines of like everyone and everything and how everything is interconnecting is like so complex, but like not hard to understand and just like beautiful. And every single character has like such emotional depth. You're learning so much about them because you are following like different perspectives. And I loved the setting. I just overall liked like the whole mystery and the solving of the mystery of the disappearances. I felt like it was easy enough for me to like sit there and be like, ooh, let me try to solve this mystery, but not too complex that I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. This book was so close to a 5-star. I think if it was just like a little bit faster paced, I would have for sure given it a 5-star, but it was a little slow, so I gave it 4.5 stars. But still, I loved this book. I'd highly recommend if you are into fantasy and you like a more like poetic style of writing, definitely read this book. The next book that I finished, I was listening to the audio of on Spotify, and it's Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is book number 3 in an interconnected standalone series. The series is called Part of Your World. That's also the name of the first book in the series. I haven't read any of those. I just jumped into this one because it came out this summer and I had heard good things. I do want to read the other books. From like my perspective, I don't think that you need to read the other books. Like, I feel fine. I don't feel like I missed out on anything. This is a contemporary romance that follows Justin and Emma, who meet on Reddit. Justin posts an Am I the Asshole thread where he asks if he's in the wrong for naming his ugly dog after his friend. The female main character is a travel nurse. So Emma goes ahead and I think comments or replies to Justin's post on Reddit. They end up DMing on Reddit and they end up talking and they find out that they both suffer from the same curse. So this is Willow's ball, sorry about that. So Emma and her best friend end up agreeing to sign a contract to work as nurses in the same city that Justin lives in. Like I said, they believe that they both suffer from the same curse, and the curse is that every person that they date goes on to find their soulmate and get married the second that they break up. So like they break up and the next person, that new ex dates ends up being their soulmate. They concoct a plan and they decide, well, if that curse is real and true, then if they date each other, then when they break up, they'll both find their soulmates. I really like this book. I really liked it. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed the audiobook of it. The recording was really good on Spotify. There was 2 voice actors, one for Emma and one for Justin. So you follow perspectives of both of them. Justin is the perfect book boyfriend. I agree with everyone who's ever talked about this book where they say that Justin is the definition of if he wanted to, he would. 1000% agree. If he wanted to, he would. And Justin wants to, and he does. I also loved that he fell first, and he fell hard. Emma and Justin face very real struggles. They're both going through very real, deep, meaningful situations in their life. And I think that because they are going through struggles and they can still have the relationship that they have, it makes the story and the relationship even more meaningful. So, yeah, 4.5 stars. I really liked it. Definitely listen to the audiobook. The audiobook was really good. Okay, book number 7. I also don't have the physical copy of this. I listened to Fable by Adrian Young. Guys, please be proud of me. I listened to this one on Libby. That's right. I got a library card and I listened to this book for free. Fable is the first book in the World of the Narrows series by Adrian Young. This is a young adult fantasy that takes place, like if you ask me, it takes place on the sea, basically on a boat and on islands. The female main character, Fable, is the daughter of the most powerful trader in the Narrows. Fable's dad abandoned her on an island that is filled with thieves, very little food, not a great place to be, following the death of her mother. So the story picks up 4 years later. Fable discovers a cache of pyre that she dredges and sells to traders who come to the island in order to make enough money to get herself off of the island. In order for her to get off of the island, she has to convince a group of young traders, and one of them named West, male main character, to help get her off the island and across the Narrows to find her dad. I gave this book 4 stars, and that feels kind of generous. The story was good. The pacing was good. The audio recording of this, terrible. I'm not sure if that is just because I was listening to it on the Libby app and maybe like the one from my library is just like not a good recording of it, but it was just really low quality. Also, Goodreads says that this is a fantasy. Is it though? I mean, I guess it is a fantasy if it's not taking place in the real world, right? And like the Narrows don't exist in the real world. So I guess it has to be a fantasy. It's just if I'm gonna read a fantasy, I want it to be more fantasy than just pirates on islands. I didn't hate it, but I don't think that this book is leaving a lasting impact on me. I am certainly not in a rush to read any more books in this series. But it was fine. It was also very young adult. Very, very young adult. Guys, the last book, book number 8, that I read this month might be my new favorite book. I'm like tearing up. Can you see this? I don't know why I'm tearing up, but I love this book. This like might be my favorite book of the year, I think. Like what else did I even read this year? Nothing compared to this one, I don't think. No, literally I'm tearing up. This is like kind of really dramatic. Give me a sec. I just love this book so much. The last book that I read this month was Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is book number 3 in the interconnected standalone series called Maple Hills. I will say, while these are like interconnected standalones, so you could technically read them without having read the other ones, I would highly recommend reading them in order because each consecutive book touches on like the main characters and like talks about their backstories of like each of the other books. So this one brings up characters from the first 2 books pretty consistently, and like I think that it's like helpful and meaningful to have read those other ones first. Okay, so this is a contemporary romance. It is specifically a hockey romance. So the whole series, it's kind of a hockey romance series. This follows the female main character, Hallie, and the male main character, Henry. We meet Henry in the earlier books, and he is definitely a fan favorite, and for good reason. And then Hallie is an aspiring author and fellow bookish girly, so if you're watching this video, I'm sure you can relate to her. She recently broke up with her childhood best friend. Following the breakup, Hallie decides that she's going to be putting herself first for like the rest of the year. Basically the first time ever. She very soon in like post-breakup meets Henry. Henry is a junior at the college, and he's also the captain of the school's hockey team. So Henry ends up crashing Hallie's book club. Immediate connection. Immediately hit it off. So eventually Henry seeks out Hallie for help with a class that he's struggling with. She agrees to help him, and then he agrees to help her write a book. Or like, not write a book, but like help her experience things that will help her write a book. This book was so cute and so fun. The story is very character focused and not really like plot driven. But you will 100% fall in love with these characters. If you don't fall in love with these characters, then you are a robot. But for real, these characters are so freaking cute. Henry is so just like heartbreakingly nice and understanding. Guys, I just love this book so much. I loved it. I loved it. So I give this book 5 stars. Oops. No, I love it. I would give it 10 stars. If I could give this book 10 stars, I would. You know what? I'm doing it. 10 stars. 10-star book right here. And that's a wrap, you guys. Those are the 8 books that I read this month. Had a very good reading month. But if you made it this far in the video and you're not subscribed, go subscribe, please. It helps support me, what I'm doing, the books that I'm reading. I will also have my Goodreads linked down below, as well as my Instagram and my Patreon. Check that out. That also, if you want to support the channel and see more content, check that out. Head over there. I have to go because I have a lot of books on my September TBR that I need to go start reading. Thanks for watching. Bye.